Hello, everyone. This is Ken Quigley from Keystroke, and thank you for joining us today. So today we're going to be covering call aid. So let me just kind of jump into the agenda. So today's agenda, we're going to be covering the history of it, why use it, the problem we had when we initially released it back in 2021, changes with the new call aid V2, how to configure it, then we'll do the demo, and then we'll get into some Q&A. Okay, so why choose call aid in the first place? Well, it's accuracy. You're able to do more calls with fewer errors, better data. We've configured it so that when you make calls, it pops up a dialog window. You've got more efficient call logging, fewer things get forgotten. Efficiency, more calls with less time. One-time cost. So many of the other options that I've seen out there over the years are subscription-based. We've configured this program so that it should be upgrade tolerant from one program to the next. So it's a one-time cost. There's no point in imposing a subscription fee when there's no ongoing maintenance or updates required. And then the last one is compatibility. It works with 32-bit and 64-bit versions of ACT, Pro and Premium, as well as on-premise soft phones. We've tested it, including Skype. Okay, compatibility, we've tested a wide variety. Okay, when we first came out with this, I distributed it out to a bunch of our peers and I said, please test this with everyone. We got a bunch back. We really didn't find anyone report incompatibilities. And I'll show you how to test later, but it was pretty cool. We got a lot of feedback and pretty much everyone was compatible with it. So let's start the demo. Before we do, I just want to mention that Call Aid is the product of the month. Okay, and so we've got a blog here about us, 20% off all December, and Call Aid video as well, which you can see at vimeo.manage, or sorry, Vimeo/manage/videos, and then the number 102-622-1911. You do not have to write this down. It is recorded. You'll have it available in your inbox tomorrow. So let's get started. Okay, so this is um, our home screen, if you will. Okay, so we've talked about the first iteration of Call Aid that was released in 2020, 2021. Except that version had one major problem. It had to be configured with each individual soft phone. Okay, so let me just actually launch because I shut my Bria because I was actually getting calls just right up to this. So let me just bring this up. Just 1 second. Okay. So this is my call. Okay, this is my soft phone. Okay, I use Bria. Our company used Bria. We've used Crew Talk. I've had this working with Skype, whichever. But the first iteration worked fine with it. We were able, and I'll show you the configurations options before. The problem that a lot of customers had was that the telco providers would change either their API or some kind of setting in it, and what previously worked suddenly would stop, and then they would call us for support. We don't support other people's software, so we really were in kind of a bad situation where we couldn't help the customers even when we wanted to, and so we were kind of stuck. So things like Magic Jack broke, Skype broke, and it was becoming very, very frustrating because we were literally taking support for certain telco providers out of the program. Okay, and this, as you might guess, frustrated everyone. Enter Call Aid 2. So in October, it was interesting. I was advising the ACT dev team on what mistakes to avoid with their click to dial features. For those that aren't aware, ACT Premium Cloud Web now supports a click to dial function, okay, where you can literally click on the phone number in the field and it will dial your default communication device. And when I told them to write to the default communication device so that they can avoid some of the configuration headaches that we went through, a bell in my head. It's like, maybe we should follow our own device. Advice. So I went to our developers and I said, look, let's forget about writing to the soft phones anymore. Let's just write to the default communication device and see how that works. So that's what we did. And then everything started working immediately with pretty much all providers. This was one of those long time learning curves, but the outcome was good. So let's kind of get into where it gets surfaced. You can see after you've installed CallAid, you will get these little buttons that automatically appear. You can select, you see this is a fax phone. I selected the option to not enable it there, but I've also got the option to put it on either side of the phone field, and you can determine and play around with your layout to decide which is best. I'm going to show you the settings to show you precisely how easy that is to configure. It really is quite. Okay, so this is how it gets surfaced within the program. Standard install. Let's go to Tools, CallAid Preference. First thing off the bat is dramatically different than the first iteration is you've got one tab. Okay, I wanted this to be super simple. Our mantra is install and call. Okay, so what I did was I made the default the Windows default. Okay. Previously, we had soft phone, Tappy, Magic Jack, and that. And I said, no, I wanted it to just be this, and it would suppress the other options. So let's take a look. Use dial prefix. We all know what that is. Sometimes dial 0 or 9 to get out, whichever, whatever your system supports. That is enabled. We don't have that, so I don't have anything populated here. Um, Dial button position, as I said, you can see mine on the right here. You can put it on the left, but my layout doesn't really support that. Okay, display button for fax field, as I said, mine is cleared, so that's not enabled. And then always center the history dialog box. We're going to get into that in a second, but by putting this or checking this, then it always appears in the same spot and doesn't, fly off on the screen or remember where it was last. So this is one of the options that we put in here. That's pretty much it for what most people will use. Okay. Now you've got the about to check the version. We've got one more version after this. It's very minor. And then you can check for updates. And this says, yep, I am up to date. Okay. Now, as I said previously, this screen wasn't available and you had to select from soft phone. Okay, and suddenly you see that these other two options were available. Now I get people asking me, why would I use this option if I can just use the default? What we say is use the default and use this here as a fallback option, because this really requires you to have, excuse me, to have the command line arguments to speak to your phone. You have to click here, browse to select the executable, and then type in here the command line arguments. And we don't know what those are. We have some suggested defaults. They may or may not work. And then you've got your call method, using the call to, tell. I'm actually going to get to this in a bit. SIP, clipboard, whichever, and then just launch the program. But as I said, this is something that a lot of our customers really struggled with, and we've moved away from. Okay. Now, Tappy, don't get a lot of people using Tappy anymore just because modems have gone the way of the dodo. But for those that still do, I actually configured a modem in advance of this demo so you can see how it appears. You can select it here, which I did. Okay, now what are the advantages of Tappy? Because you wouldn't imagine there's many, just given the costs of phone lines and setting up and even getting modems these days. One of the things is actually call pops. So what is a call pop? Well, if someone has an inbound call and you have a phone line that supports caller ID and a device that supports ID, then CallAid can actually take you directly to the contact in ACT, okay? And then show the history form for that caller ID. So we'll pre-populate the history form, which I'll show you in a bit. And so it has a support for what CallAid doesn't normally support, because if you're using a soft phone, we can't support call pops. And the simple reason is for call pops to work, our software has to be able to talk to the soft phone and be able to connect to the API. That's the same issue we ran into before where we kept getting tripped up. And so we don't want to get into that and, have features break. based on changes to telco software. So we don't support call pops, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but back to here, I'm now going to go back to Windows default, and that's it. When I say install and call, with the default option, you're pretty much ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to click on OK. Now, default communication device. What the heck is that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'll show you here. I'll right click and I'll click on settings. And of course, it pops off on the wrong screen. Let's go here. Okay, now I'm going to click on apps and I'm going to click on default apps. You don't have to do this. I'm just showing you how to determine. Okay, now when you get here, you've got two command lines that are two protocols that you can use. Okay, our call aid uses the tell protocol. So if I type in tell, okay, you can see here that Bria has come up. That's the name of our software. Okay, I can select, you see, I've got Skype, I've got Phone Link, I've got different ones that I can browse to. If I see my soft phone in here, then I can support it. Okay, because Tel is the primary protocol that Call Aid works with. There is an option for Call to. Okay, and you can see this protocol. Again, I've got Bria, and if I click here, I can see things like Skype and Microsoft Teams. Okay, so that's basically all you've got to do to confirm whether or not it works. Now, if this initially is cleared, what would happen is you go back here. I would then click this number, okay, and you see this, boom, it's coming straight up. Okay, so this phone number was automatically dialed, populated into my soft phone, and you can see that this history recording window, which is custom that we made, is actually recording the time of the call, the duration of the call. I want to be super clear here because I've had more than a few people ask me about this. This does not record phone calls. Okay, we're not in that business. We're not going to, go through the privacy hoops or jump through the privacy hoops. This just records the duration for the purposes of history logging. Okay, so then when this is done, you can select here, call attempted in my case, boom, and if I go over to history, you can see call attempted, okay, and you can see the duration is 1 minute. It's not going to record, 47 seconds or whatever it was, okay? But you can see right here that it recorded it at 1:14. It recorded with whom it was, okay? It recorded the duration, call attempt. Now, what was the other thing that you saw when we were displaying this? Let's do this again, okay? This time I'm going to call my mobile phone, okay? And I'm going to cancel that. You see here that it's going to record the duration, but if I want to actually, let's say that I hit voicemail, I can actually schedule a follow-up just like the history dialog box in ACT, schedule a follow-up here so that, that's automatically part of my post-call workflow, okay? And that, and then this will pop back up. I can record the call and we are done, okay? That's how simple it is. So when I say install and call, it really is that simple. You just simply install the software. You got to close ACT first, install the software, come in. It's going to make the first time that you call, it's going to pop up a window that's going to say, would you like to use the default communication device once, or would you like to use it always? Okay, if you select always, it will never pop up again when you collect that. If you select once, then it will obviously prompt you each and every single time, which would quickly get tiresome. So you select always, and then that becomes your default communication device for call aid, and it will continue on indefinitely. Okay, so just kind of going through my notes here. Okay, so we see we see the icons as they're positioned. We see them, how easy it is to dial them out. We see that it selects the default communication device. It prompts you with the dialog window for history. It actually records the length of the call, okay, and prompts you after the call is over to close that and record that history, all in one workflow, okay? What would you be doing otherwise? You would be copying and pasting, okay, or manually keying in the numbers, slowing yourself down, increasing the likelihood of errors, okay, and just getting less done in more time. So this solves all that problems, but the big hurdle that we surmounted was getting over that initial configuration option, which we've solved with this latest feature, okay? And that is largely it for that part of the demo, but there's a couple of things that I want to explain that, and by the way, this works with the Windows version of ACT, Pro or Premium, as I said earlier, 32-bit or 64-bit, so it's compatible with all of them. Now, if you were using a TAPI device with version 23 or older, and you were used to making your calls with the modem, okay, and there's lots of people out there that still do, even though they are shrinking in number. When Act V24 came around, one of the things that people didn't like was that it stopped supporting that click to dial. Okay, Act didn't have that little phone icon anymore that you can click and dial out a number, and that feature was lost. With Call Aid, it comes back. Okay, let me just see. I think I've got a message here. I can't see it. Okay. Sorry, my mouse is getting a little non-responsive. Okay, so that was one little historical note. The thing I want to occasionally mention is when you're using this, and we get people calling us for this, is when you click on a number, it will sometimes say, depending on how that data got in, you will click on it, will pop up a message that says no phone number to dial, okay? And what that's often caused by is the importing of data as opposed to the typing in of the data. So all you've got to do is select it, cut, and paste right back in. Okay, save, and then that number will work forever after that. Okay, let me just see here. Okay, okay. So does this web app interface work with WhatsApp? Thank you very much. One of the reasons that we've put in a 2-week trial isn't because we want to have people take a longer time to purchase, is that we want people to test it with every single app out there, okay? Whether it is Nextiva, whether it's Box, whether it's you name it, okay? We can't tell you the long list. We can tell you the things that we've tested. So what I encourage you to do is go to actforwork.com. Let me just bring this up here. Okay, go to actforwork.com. Okay, I know this looks like a lot, but we've got a lot of programs. Scroll down to Call Aid. Now here you're going to see V2. This is the old one. And I know what you're thinking. Why not erase it? Well, there's a lot of people that bought V1, and we've got a lot of links out there that we don't want to break. So drill down into V2, download this. This little version test is for our reference on updating. Install this, make sure to have Act closed, go configure it, go to the here, which you can actually save yourself some time here, go to settings and do that default app. If you can select with Tel, WhatsApp here, it should work, okay? Because Call Aid uses Tel, okay, the Tel protocol. Windows Phone Link compatibility, same thing, okay? So someone asked for incoming calls. As I mentioned, with tappy devices that support caller ID on phone lines that support caller ID. Call pops are supported. I explained what call pops are before. It will bring you right to the contact based on the caller ID. On soft phones, it's not supported just because we can't configure something to work with the API of every single soft phone out there. Okay, when you're working with a tappy device, it's more Windows settings, so it's much, much more straightforward. But what works with Bria won't work with Nextiva, won't work with Crew, won't work with any number of things. So unfortunately for call pops on inbound calls, that's only supported with supported tappy devices. Okay, any other questions? But this is the simplest way to confirm. If you see uh, your chosen default communication device in the TEL list, okay, and you select it here as your TEL default, it should work with Call Aid. Okay, I can't make a guarantee because there's too many to count out there, but that's generally a good sign. And then after that, download the trial from the source that I mentioned, give it a test. You've got 2 weeks to sort through everything. But once you're done, the amount of calls and follow-ups and history recordings that you can now record with dramatically increased efficiency, I think is worth the cost. Okay, so let me just go back in here. Okay, and let's go to keystroke, spell it correctly. Okay, show you how to find it. Click on shop. Actually, you can even scroll down here and you'll see a little slider here that will display it. But in this case, just go to shop and just type in call aid. Boom. Okay. You can see it's normally $89.95. This month it's going for $71.96. I know that seems random. That's 20%. Okay. You can purchase it, do it yourself. I don't always recommend people to do it themselves, but when I say install and call, this one's pretty easy. So you should be able to get away with it without setup support. So Mike, you asked about Skype. I personally have tested Skype and it works fine. I tested on my own computer and my own setup. It was one of the first things that I tested after Bria and it worked no problem. Okay. Obviously, you've got to have your own account set up for that, but it worked great for me. Okay, so I hope that helps. And that's pretty much it. We may actually come in under time, which often isn't the case with me talking. Let me just see what other points here. We talked about call pops, and as I mentioned, when we've got here, we'll just go to, because I actually really am pleased that ACT got this feature into APC. Okay, and of course, let me just go to here. Okay, why don't I type in a number, 416 499-3090. So you see how this is now hyperlinked. Okay. So what they've done is they've built this feature into this. So it's now trying to communicate with the default communication device, and you can see that it's popping it up. What isn't it doing? Okay. And I'm not minimizing this. This is a great addition to the Act Premium Cloud feature set. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't prompt you to record the history and it doesn't record the duration of the call. So we all have the same kind of calls. We may get into something and maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. There's really not going to be, at least maybe I'm just at the age where I can't remember how long some calls will be, and I end up having to guess, and I remember one time I was on a call just recently, I was stunned at how long it was based on what the software said. But in this case, there is no time, there is no history prompt or anything like that. So you would have to then manually click on here and record the history. So it's something that isn't prompting you, okay? Whereas Call Aid does prompt you and it does record the duration, okay? Does it work with Teams? Again, Teams, as long as Teams works with Tell, it should work, okay? So go to the default apps. We can do this all day. This is why I say just go to the default apps. And again, just for clarity, right click here, select settings, select apps, default apps, and type in Tell. Okay. I believe that Teams, Microsoft Teams is here. So this should work. Okay. But please test. That's why we provide the 2-week call or 2-week trial. But Microsoft Teams seems to be supported, as is Skype here, phone link, everything. Okay. And this should be able to dial out. I know that that was something that was really requested when we first came out, was team support and Ring Central and a few others. This was such a relief because this, even though we we advised ACT to use it before we implemented ourselves, however we got there, this really has made the process dramatically easier and widened the appeal to a much broader audience. And now tons of people are using it. Okay. Any other questions? I'm happy to wrap up in 30 minutes. We seem to be doing great here. Okay. If there are no other questions, I thank you all very much for your time. I hope this was useful to you. Please go to the site that I said, actforwork.com, drill down to Call Aid V2, give it a try. Again, only works with the Windows version, but give it a try, and I think that you will find that this dramatically improves the amount of calls, the accuracy of the calls, and how much you can get done in less time. So with that, I thank you all, and have a great day.